How's everyone feeling? It's day 3. SFF has been good so far to you? Good. And thank you guys so much for spending time on this panel. I'm really excited for this because I think we talk a lot about finance, tech, and also policies in the main stage, at the festival stage. But right now, it comes down to managing and also hiring the people who are going to execute all the things that we talk about in the other stages as well. But before we get started, can we do a quick round of introduction, maybe starting from Chris?
Thanks, Vanessa. Hi, all. It's good to see so many people here. I thought the first session after lunch on the last day might be 3 people would be lucky. So thanks for coming along. My name's Chris Pyle. I'm the managing partner for Mission Plus. We're a specialist fintech build company based here in Singapore. We have operations in Australia and the Middle East as well. We specialize in providing sort of fractionalized technology leadership to all sorts of companies, mainly in financial services, but also across climate and ESG, logistics and other sectors as well. We're 50 CTOs strong here in the region, and then we have delivery teams in Vietnam and the Philippines as well. We also coordinate and sort of manage the largest CTO community for financial services in Singapore as well, a group called FinTech, which, we sort of get together and talk about all the challenges that we face in financial services. So that's me. Thanks.
Ning.
Hi everyone, my name is Ning. I'm the co-founder of the Courage chapter. So what we do is we help senior professionals to transition to their second chapters through meaningful projects with companies. Right? So we do fractional work as well. And our whole objective is really to reimagine the workforce for a greater intergenerational relationship.
Hello, my name is Larissa. I'm the CHRO of Unilever International. Have been 15 years in Unilever, now 2 years in Singapore. Is my 7th country so far, originally from Germany. So we have piloted a couple of fractional workforce models where we give people a lot of flexibility. So very honored to be invited.
Thank you. So now let's set the context also and talk about how work has shifted. The traditional 9-to-5 model has evolved, especially in tech companies and also now in financial services as well. How has this shifted? And also, if you could shed light on the differences between fractional role versus part-time and contract work versus advisory. There's so many different terms right now. Maybe, Chris, you could set some context first?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely shifted. Lots of businesses now are creating that flexibility because I think after COVID, employees are reevaluating sort of where work fits into their life. So I think there's a sort of push from the employee side. And employers are going to have to sort of work out how to evolve pretty quickly. Just around the sort of term fractional, it's definitely a grey and ambiguous area. We've had a lot of conversation about what it actually is. Is it consulting? Is it part-time? But for us, fractional leadership is really around sort of experienced executives, leaders who have had roles or senior roles in companies. And they're deployed and engaged in an organization at a strategic or sort of oversight level. So they're usually engaged in a longer term. And our CTOs that we deploy can either be 5%. We do a lot of mentoring for technology teams. We do short-term consulting gigs. But usually it's a sort of 1 to 2 day a week sort of gig. And usually they'll work across 2 or 3 different businesses. And they'll provide that sort of leadership and guidance. I guess sort of consulting is really just project-based. So we're much more engaged, embedded in the business, but we do it in a shorter period of time. Whether that's 2 days back-to-back or 2 hours a day, it just depends on the opportunity.
Speaking about fractional roles, Ning, I learned that you used to work full-time in Unilever in HR, and now you have moved on to a fractional role. How was that transition like for you? And then afterwards, Larissa, could you share some of your perspective of how that worked out for your team as well? Ning, please.
Yeah, so I think I come here in the capacity of running my own social enterprise and also as a fractional hire. Right, so I used to work in Larissa's team in Unilever, and right now I'm working 2 days a week as a HR professional, and then the other 3+ days I'm actually running my social enterprise.
What drove that decision in the first place?
Right, so I mean, there can be many models, right? I think I'm a zillennial, right? So I'm a millennial, but almost Gen Z. And I think this is a new trend, right? A lot of us are looking to relook at how working should be and what is meaningful work to me, right? And I think it was always a dream of mine to be able to, run a social enterprise for senior folks, and yet also have a little bit of income stability as well. And I think Unilever is a very progressive company that allowed me to do a little bit of both, right? So right now I think this is a trend. Some people are taking sabbaticals, some people are choosing to work fractionally. But I think the idea is, how can we relook at our contribution to the workplace in various capacities?
And Larissa, how did that help your team?
So I still remember the dinner we had together when you were actually in the beginning of founding that company, where she told me actually the heartbreaking news that she wants to resign because she wants to have her own company, which for me as a line manager was on one side very inspirational because she explained to me why she wants to do that and how she would actually like to help senior Singaporean citizens who have retired to come back into the workforce, which is something we sometimes in our mind have these limits of, no, this is an older person, what value can they add, they must be really narrow-minded, right? So you wouldn't consider doing that. But she came actually from a perspective of, look, I have actually talked to someone who would like to come back and who is very active, but who is facing all of these limits. And that's why I want to create this company. So for me, it was very inspiring. But at the same time, I knew I'm going to lose one of my best HR people because she was a wonderful HR business partner. So we kind of said, okay, first, why don't you go and you focus on that? But there must be some day where you maybe come back and you come back with much more experience with the learnings you had. So right now, actually, she's working for me for 2 days because we have a very meaningful project where, unfortunately, we need to let some employees go. As every company, from time to time, we go through restructurings. But I knew she is very good and she now has acquired a skill which she can teach my employees on how to find their way back into the workforce. So for someone who has been, I don't know, like me, 15 years in a company, sometimes it's very hard to imagine how do you find your way back? Can you work actually for a different place? Is there a different life outside? Especially Unilever, people feel very connected, right? So I said to her, can we imagine a program where you set these people up for success? Not writing CVs. Any outplacement company can do that. But what I need you to do is how do you get them into the mindset? Because when someone loses their job, and so one day I lost my job, the first 4 weeks, I was in an identity crisis. Who am I now? I don't have this job title anymore. I couldn't imagine where to go. It's like losing your partner, right? You're losing that very important part of your life that gives you meaning. So you waste, and some people waste 4 or 5 months in that research of who am I actually, rather than getting ready. So I said, why can we not invent a program that sets people up very quickly for that success, that helps them psychologically, mentally, and so on. And I knew, because of the company she founded, the skills she learned, but also who she is, she would most likely be the best person, and she can do it in 2 days, right? So hence, we now found this wonderful model where she's continuing to do whatever she does. I have no clue, actually. And the other 2 days split, I don't even know sometimes. Today is the day she's working, she's not working. It's completely objective-based. And so far, the program is going very well.
It's quite interesting because we know that startups leverage on fractional roles to get experienced hires like CTOs, for example, especially when they may not be able to hire them for full-time yet. But we now see that at enterprise level, you can also leverage fractional roles for different purposes as well. Someone with like specific experience, or maybe in your Courage chapter, for example, you can lend that experience and the insights to transfer over to Unilever as well. Now let's move on to gig work, which is really common. I think some people call it side hustles right now. It's really common right now, and something companies may not be able to restrict employees to avoid, or may not be aware of it, like photography or running your own agency. And even right now, I'm doing gig work for SFF. I'm like DJing at festival stage, and I hopped on over to talent stage right now to do this panel. So very, very common. From a corporate perspective, gig work or side hustle has conventionally been frowned upon. So how do HR policies and initiatives in Unilever and other international corporations can adapt to all these as employees' needs change as well? And it's going to happen inevitably.
So I think when you as a company look at this from a jealousy point of view, right, of I must own the time of this person and I cannot allow them to do their thing, at some point they will leave you. It's like when you're in a relationship and you become too restrictive, At some point, your partner will say, thank you very much, I'm going to go, because they anyway going to follow whatever they want to do, right? In a company, it's the same thing. When you restrict people too much, they will anyway do it, they might not tell you. So then it becomes something that's actually invisible, so you have no idea what they are doing. Or they're going to leave you and they follow their dream, right? So in Unilever International, we have lots of people who are very entrepreneurial. This is a skill we want. Now, when you have entrepreneurial people, they will want to create their own companies. That is what you hired them for, right? Exactly. So we created a program, it's called UI Owners or UI Founders, where you as an employee can actually come in and say, hey, I would like to do this. So they go through a business integrity process. It needs to be signed off. They cannot sell shampoos because we sell shampoos, right? You can't do something that's competitive. Most people anyway don't want to do that. They want to do something else, right? And they need to tell you, look, I'm not going to use more than 10% of my time. Now, I'm anyway using almost 150% of people's time sometimes in a company, right? Because they are top performers. The people who will come to you and ask for this are the ones who are normally your top performers. Because I also have some people who said, why would I do that? Why would I do 2 jobs? I want to be on the pool on the weekend. Okay, so you're going to be at the pool. But there's some people, they have so much energy, they also want to do something else, right? And these anyway going to be your top performers. So we said, you need to continue being a top performer, so there's a certain degree you need to achieve. Then you can have your own company. You sign it off, and they do whatever they want. So my dream was always to found something for myself, because who knows until when I will be in that corporate world. Normally, I test all my programs myself. So in HR, I think you need to test what you launch. So I now just started to found my own company and see how this goes. And it's actually a wonderful experience because you learn so many skills. Like, I was never interested in finance. I have no business acumen, digital marketing, sales strategies. Why do I need to learn this when I'm in HR? But it's very relevant for my job. Now, because I have this company, I have no choice. I have to learn it, right? And so it becomes actually also a good skill for my job back in the company. And the same I see with other employees. So for us, this is one model. We have another one, but it is working very well.
There's a principle that I learned, right, that to be the best, you're either the top 1% in your skill set. Say, example, if it's like, say, financial modeling, you have to be like, say, the top 1% in that field to be really, really good. Or you can have 2 different skill sets that you're really good, and you just have to be the top 25% in each bucket, and you can be excellent already. So how do you find this interdisciplinary skill set to really stand out from your peers? Chris, I want to go back to you. You work with a lot of fractional CTOs, but you were telling me backstage that some of them also still have full-time roles. How do you create that trust and accountability between the CEOs or founders, engaging them, as well as the fractional CTOs?
Yeah, so I guess we curate our CTOs pretty closely. Making sure that they usually have some sort of corporate experience and startup experience is usually a starting point. I think having that broad set of skills, like if they've been in an organization for 20 years, they know how the processes work within that organization, and they find it very hard to leave. But if they've worked across multiple organizations, they've done multiple startups, they're on boards and advisory, that's usually where we hit the sweet spot. So even though they might have a full-time job, they've got commitments, they might have visa challenges, they still want to do interesting things and work with interesting sort of people. So that's where they like to sort of really sort of dive in. I guess that's their side hustle for a full-time CTO.
And I'm pretty sure they themselves feel really connected to the company themselves before joining as a fractional CTO. The mission, the technology, and etc. And they'll be very vested regardless, right?
Absolutely.
We have read a Korn Ferry report that uncovered the top 3 reasons why people stay and leave. So in the top 3 priorities for staying, we found out that it's generous compensation, flexible working hours, as well as job security. And the top 3 reasons for leaving, of course, it's low compensation, lack of career advancement opportunities, and lack of job security. But all these 3 reasons seem to change time to time. As reports are published year after year, this changed. Example, flexible working hours. This was never a top 3 reason, say, 3-5 years ago. So how do HRs, headhunters, and senior executives keep up with the next generation who are constantly changing these top 3 needs and wants? From anyone?
Well, I think many of us would know that there's this thing called the tripartite work arrangements, right? The flexi place, flexi time, and flexi load. So I think maybe later we'll be covering a little bit about that. Like the big tech companies are kind of reversing their opinion about the flexi load and flexi place thing. But I think these are the three things that HR people would probably look out for. How may we progress in these three, right? So flexi time means that you can start and end your work anytime you would like, as long as you can finish your work on time. Flexi place is that you can do remote working, out beyond Singapore or maybe just at home. And then flexi load is how much work do you want to do. Of course, your compensation will commensurate with the amount of work that you are taking on. Yeah, so I think these are the three.
Yeah, out of my work at FinTech Nation, the venture capital fund, I spent a lot of time at Party Post also doing corp dev and partnerships. But the last 3 days I've been here at SFF, which may not be directly relevant to my company in advertising tech space. But then today, just walking down the hall, I caught up with my friend from IDEMIA, and we were talking about how can we leverage creators and influencers to advertise for some new projects potentially, and then immediately this becomes a new business opportunity, and then I connected my friend with my boss as well. So there are a lot of opportunities that can come from, I think, having like dipping toes across different platforms as well. Now moving to the, tapping on the flexi hour arrangement that you were talking about, CNA also published an article last week on work from office or resign, with mentions of large companies like Grab taking a hard stance on 5 days a week in office, and that's mandated. And a portion of C-level and HRs are hoping that this new initiative will trigger voluntary turnover. What do you think of this stance of work from office or resign?
I would resign.
You would resign. Okay. Wait, I want to hear from you. Right now, if how many of you are working from home, a flexible arrangement? Like, raise your hands. Okay, that's, wow, that's about like 60, 70%. How many? 9 to 5. I think they are not in SFF right now, actually. Oh, you are? Okay, we have a few people. 9 to 5 might not be able to make it to SFF. So you resign yourself? Oh, probably, yes.
Yeah, right.
Also, of course.
Definitely resign, but I just want to check if there's anyone from Grab in the audience first before we...
Oh, from Grab.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, and if so, the 70% of you who raised your hand that you're flexible working arrangement, if your HR tells you 9 to 5, right, 5 days a week, how many would potentially resign? Potentially, just in case your team's around, your colleagues are around. Potentially. Okay, the rest are too sensitive. I think just in case people are lurking behind, watching them as well. What's your take on this? What, do you agree? Do you disagree?
So I think the more flexibility you can give your employees, the more empowered they are, right? So we have, for example, introduced a program where last week one of my managers came to me and he actually said to me, look, unfortunately my father passed away last week. So I said, okay, that's not great, so sorry to hear. And he said, yeah, but that's not the reason why I'm telling you. The reason why I tell you this is because last year, I went back to Turkey with my family, and my daughter was able to spend with him a whole month. So after many, many years of living in the US, I actually was able to bring my daughter back, and for 4 weeks, these two had time to spend time with each other before he actually passed away this year. And this, for me, means the world, right? And he was able to do that because we introduced a program which is called UI Venturers, where you actually can venture out and you can work 4 weeks per year from any place in the world where you have a work permit. If it's from the beaches of Bali, if you want to be in Turkey, you want to be in the US, you want to be in one of our main hubs, that's up to you. You decide you need to adjust your work to the time zone, so you need to do your job. But basically 4 weeks you can do whatever you want. So we have around 15% of population who are now taking that. You need to regulate the program so people cannot all of a sudden disappear. You don't know where they are. You don't know how long they stay, right? But what we saw is people, actually I have not one person who violated the policy or who didn't come back. Because they value so much that they can do this, that they will safeguard that they are not losing the benefit, right? And also I had not any problem that someone didn't perform in the 4 weeks or they were just hanging out on the beach and drinking. That's not happening because people... Normally, when you trust and you treat your employees like adults, they will behave like adults. But if you treat them like a child and you kind of say, you must do that, then they will most likely behave like that, right? And they will start doing things that doesn't make sense. So my experience with this flexibility is when you force me to be in an office, that doesn't mean that I'm working. That doesn't mean that I'm engaging with my colleagues. I can be in the office For example, I have some days where I have only meetings. I'm the whole day in a box, in a phone booth, basically, not engaging with anyone. What's the value? I will do it if you track me because I need to badge in. But I think we need to give people the ability to assess themselves. When do I have to be in an office because I need to connect? And when can I be anywhere in the world? And I would say 99% of people in the world will make the right decision. You will have maybe 1% who will never connect, and some, but they're not going to be able to perform in their job, right? So it's not possible.
I like what you mentioned about letting people assess themselves, because this is also relevant to Netflix, which is very famous for releasing the culture book, right, or the culture playbook. And I'm not sure whether this has changed, but the last I read was that they don't have like a set, like, 25 days of leave, 18 days of leave based on seniority, which most enterprises do, right? You get the number of leaves based on how long you've been in the company or based on your different roles. So unlimited leaves. But the funny thing they found out is that the people applying for leave is so much less than many other companies. It's less than, say, the industry standard of, say, 20 days, much less. People don't want to apply for leave when they have unlimited leaves. And that's, I think, also selecting the right people to join your team who can self-regulate, self-assess, but also trusting that they know when's the right time to take a break as well.
If I can add to the topic about being available in the office, I think from the Courage Chapter perspective, because when we help senior professionals to transition to another company, I think the initial weaning phases, they should kind of, we think that they should kind of like show up in the office, because it would be quite difficult for a fractional person to really blend into the team, into a completely new team, right? And in order for them to do their job well, they need to integrate well. And to integrate well, we realize that actually the face time is quite important at the start. So, maybe it's a bit of a blend, right? Maybe companies should afford the flexibility, but maybe the first 3 months, your own prerogative, maybe you should appear more in the office to make friends first, right? And then you can slowly kind of take the flexible approach.
Before I move on, do we have a Pigeonhole slide that we can share? This is a Pigeonhole-enabled session, so the last 10 minutes are reserved for you guys to raise some questions for our expert panelists over here. So scan this QR code if you want to ask questions about anything they've spoken about or anything relevant to this topic, and I'll raise some questions to the speakers later. You were talking about the Courage chapter and helping senior professionals transition. The retirement age is planned to be raised to 64, and the re-employment age will be increased to 69 by 2026. Should the concept of retirement be redefined entirely?
Yeah, I think definitely. In fact, many senior professionals, they don't enjoy the term retirement. They think it's like a no like boo-boo word, right? And I think the reality is that, in the past, roles were a lot more linear, right? So it's very chunked up. Like people study it, and then they graduate, they go and work, and then they retire. So it's like 3 main chunks. But right now, the world is so fluid, right? People study throughout their lives. In fact, if they don't continue studying, they become irrelevant very quickly. And in the mid-career, people take sabbaticals, people take 3 days a week because they want to take care of their children. And similarly, for the senior professionals, they want to extend their career longevity. I think the world is getting living longer and living healthier, and a lot of people are pursuing purpose now as a prerogative. So I think because of the fluidity of work, I don't think retirement is really a popular concept anymore. And I think in the past, why there's retirement, right, is because, like my grandparents' generation, for instance, they were doing more manual-based work, right, because maybe they were less educated and all that. And when the time came, they had to retire because physically they were not able to, continue doing the work. But right now, it's a knowledge economy, right? It's knowledge-based, and experience stacks up. So actually, if anything, right, our senior professionals get better and better and more experience in what they do. So naturally, they can come back to the workforce as mentors, as coaches, as fractional workers. And that's the thing that we are looking at.
But how do you prevent ageism in the workplace then?
Yeah, so I think ageism is a big thing, right? I think one of the biggest things is the stereotypes. Like Larissa did mention some stereotypes. Ageism affects everyone. I don't think it's only about seniors. Like sometimes I think Larissa probably got promoted to director really young, and I think people would probably think that you're too young to lead, etc.
Too young,
yeah, too young, too old. Then what is the correct age, right? There's always somebody who's going to say something. So I think we want to create a future where it's livable for ourselves, right? I think I have a story to tell. I was talking to a 50-plus-year-old lady who said that when she was a younger manager at 30 years old, she rejected a gentleman, a senior gentleman, because she thought that he was too old to fit into her team. She thought that he couldn't fit into the culture. She thought that he couldn't maybe be relevant to the team. But right now, when she's 50 years old, she told me that, hey, my perspective totally shifted. I still feel relevant. I can still learn a lot, and I can still blend very well with the younger generation. So I think it's very poignant because you look at, everybody is responsible for your future self. So what kind of workplace are you trying to build, right? So I think number one is to stop the stereotypes and just look at people as they are and take a leap of faith to engage people at all ages.
I think,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I was just going to build on that because I absolutely agree with all the points. But, I guess the introduction of AI and the accelerated sort of adoption of AI presents us with some interesting challenges, like knowledge. We've been through that sort of era of knowledge workers and knowledge being the most powerful thing. But knowledge is, I guess, now becoming sort of commoditized. And so it's really moving into sort of a period of wisdom, like an era of wisdom. So you might have the knowledge, but have you done it before and have you learnt those lessons? And so I think, people who have been around for a long time have had those lessons. They've got the scars, they've got the grey hair. And so I think we're going to see a re-emergence of older workers who have been there, done that, probably using AI to build businesses from scratch and do some cool things.
Yeah, and I think what you are doing and what inspired me when we just were talking outside is we did last year a project where we brought in senior professionals to coach our leaders, where we saw that in Asia, somehow when you are already more senior, people will listen to you more and you are automatically more capable. So when I basically talk to my leaders, can also be because I'm German, I'm very direct, I'm looking too young, they were not listening. But when I brought in these more senior coaches, they all of a sudden, they worked in Microsoft before in big companies, so they have been in sales and marketing, but they also got a coaching education. So we brought them like a sports coach, 24/7 with the leader on the field. All of a sudden, we were able to see transformation in that leadership style. So what I'm now thinking is we are now going through a digital transformation. Could I get in digital coaches? So instead of hiring a digital resource forever, which is very expensive, you might not find them. Unilever is not known as a digital company. People might not be even interested to work with us because we're not attractive, right? We are not the Googles of this world. But could they come for some time and then coach someone? I think these type of models can be very successful. You then need companies, I think like the two of you, for example, for me, finding someone who graduated from Microsoft and who has done now a coaching education, I don't have the time to find them, right? Or I wouldn't have the time to now look, can I find someone who is very digital averse but wants to work 2 days per week? I think that's the gap we need to fill.
Larissa, if you don't have the time to find, you can always find Chris at Mission Plus. He will find them for you, right? Now, I want to shift gears to tech startups. We're surrounded by all the booths behind us who are from tech startups exhibiting here, and a lot of them have fractional CTOs right now. But, and coming from a VC lens, when we see pitch decks, we can kind of spot okay, in the team deck, right, this one is fractional. But you're a tech company. How do tech startups ensure that the optics, especially when meeting clients and investors, remain positive when showcasing strong tech capabilities despite having fractional roles? Chris?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting area for us. We play a lot in this space with early stage companies. We're working with a lot of VCs and venture studios. And again, it's either they need someone who can come in and help deliver a proof of concept MVP to prove out a business model. And again, no one's going to come in full time for 3 months, 6 months just to do that with no hope that there might be not a job on the other end of it. So we're seeing a lot of traction now where we come in for 6 to 8 weeks, do a very quick burst. The fractionals working 2 days a week, leading a team of developers. And because they've had that experience either working in VCs, PE, and have definitely built products before, they're shortcutting a lot of the mistakes that they've made. They've learnt those lessons so that they're bringing things to market a lot faster.
how do companies and founders decide when is the right time, at which stage of the company's growth? Is it better to have someone full-time but maybe less experienced, more affordable to hire given the company's budget and burn rate, versus hiring fractional? What stage and how does this shift?
It's definitely, there's no cookie-cutter solution. I think they should always have a fractional because it gives them that second brain. So even if they
so even if you have like a full-time, say CTO, it's useful to have a fractional role who's very experienced, like an advisor.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a fintech especially, you're working in a regulated sort of industry, usually your plans are to launch in one market, then you're going to scale across multiple markets. And again, not many people have had the experience of building businesses at scale. Like, these people aren't just kicking around. And if they are, they're probably working for Mission Plus. So we've got the talent. But going from 0 to 1 is fine. But when you're going from 1 to 5, there's lots of different problems. And usually the founding CTO is a head of engineering. He might be a friend of the CEO's. He's done a great job of getting the company to that first stage. But as soon as he's like, okay, I've got to launch this, I need to deploy cloud infrastructure in multiple countries. I've got to deal with regulation, data privacy, et cetera, that's where we step in and provide that sort of support and mentoring guidance.
That's very interesting to hear because I personally have the stigma, right, that if I see fractional CTOs in a deck, especially in the early stage, I'll be a bit, doubtful about it. But I think after learning from you, we have to open our minds to like, how does that help the company scale up from like say 1 to 10? How do you think like an enterprise, build tech stack like an enterprise and be very foolproof versus just having say someone full-time, but maybe much more junior?
And I think it's also about the mindset of that person coming in, right? So if I come with the mindset that this is just a gig and I don't have to deep dive here and I don't need to get to know them, then most likely that will be the outcome. So when we did the coaching work, we had a couple of experiments which didn't work because they came with, this is what I always do, so I'm going to sell you that product, and they just recycled something, right? Or they didn't want to work with the HR person and so on, so it didn't work. Those who then came, and they maybe also only stayed 6 months, but who really went to, what's the problem here to solve? How do I customize? How do I make it work for that environment? They were equally capable. So I think it's not so much about, are you there long or short? Of course, longer gives you more insights, but it's more about how do you approach the job.
Exactly, and we were also discussing just now that hiring the right talents can take really long. You're hiring for like a digital role right now, a tech role right now, and it's taking so many months. But a fractional tech talent may be able to fill up the gaps meanwhile while hiring someone full-time and doing interviews to fill up the gaps and keep the progress running as well.
Yeah, that whole concept of an interim CTO is, again, this is another term that gets bandied around, fractional, interim. Yeah. Having someone who can come in and have that business or create that business continuity because they are experienced, they can come in, keep running the projects until they find a full-time person is another area that we are pretty active in.
We're down to our last 8 minutes, so I want to leave some time for Q&A. Can we bring up the Pigeonhole QR code again on the screen? So scan this QR code if you have any questions, and also to get the most out of our speakers over here. We have a couple of questions who have been upvoted already, so I'm just going to flash it up right now. The first question is on career paths are less linear than ever with more professionals shifting between industries and roles. How can organizations and educational institutions better support a culture of lifelong learning to accommodate these changing career shifts? So maybe I think from this panel over here, we can maybe focus from on the organization perspective.
I'd flip it on its head straight away and say the individuals should be taking responsibility for their own careers. There's a great blog written by this guy, Rashad, I'm going to mess up his last name, Tabakawala. Anyway, he's got a great blog. It's called The Future Does Not Fit in the Containers of the Past. And he basically talks about how you can adapt and become this sort of company of one. So as a company of one, you need to be multi-skilled, you need to be connected, you need to be collaborative. You'll need to be thinking about what's happening today and what's going to happen tomorrow. And so if you adopt that mindset of the company of one, obviously you're way better prepared. But when you use that those skills and those behaviours inside a large organisation, you probably end up leaving and starting your own business, like we talked about before. But your career path and your life is in your own hands, literally. I think so. I think it's less about the organisation.
I think one very relevant example that I can share literally happened 10 minutes before this panel, and I was catching up with someone called Ivan down near the Kazakhstan booth. So he was former MD of a FMCG company, pretty large as well. And then now he has moved on to venture capital investments and trading and also property investments. 3 different things with 3 different teams running it. And I was asking him, how do you manage so many things? It's very diversified. You are trading physical assets and doing startup investments and property. Like, how do you keep up with everything? And he was saying his experience in FMCG, managing 15 companies at one time, 30 brands or so, and how thousands of SKUs, help him manage all these different business units with a bird's eye view, but also looking around the corners as well. So actually shifting, industries to industries and across different roles, as long as you can harness this skill set, right, and transfer them across your different roles, it can actually benefit you from transitioning and also leveling up from other peers as well, right? We got one more question before our time is up, or 2 more questions. Thank you for sending very quality questions as well. What are some successful models for integrating feedback and performance metrics for fractional roles? And where can traditional performance review cycles apply, or what happens when they don't apply? Maybe Larissa first and then anybody else?
I think I will take an example from where it didn't go so well and what we now learned. So I think bringing in some of these roles when you are not very clear what you actually want, and you are not setting goals in the beginning, so you don't do the good things you do with your normal employees, then we saw that performance, for example, was not there. And then it's also very difficult to hold the person accountable because the person didn't even know what you wanted.
So
right?
the hiring manager or the team must be very clear why you hire this fractional person
Yes.
for, what are the objectives.
Yeah.
And
And I think you need to do the good best. So with one of them, I now started to do quarterly check-ins. We looked at that, and it's doing the basics, right? So I think that one you need, and you can do for that person the 360 feedback as well, right? So I think it's not that complex. In HR, most things can be solved with common sense. You need to have common sense, then anyone can work in HR. Okay. It's not the NASA.
Common sense. Chris, anything to add on? How do you integrate all these metrics into performance?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for startups, metrics are really around, did you deliver the product? Are we, iterating the product? So the metrics are probably a little simpler in that context compared to an enterprise. One interesting thing that we are looking at, because again, we're scaling, I guess, our fractional base is, as part of a product development lifecycle, you've got weekly check-ins, different sort of agile ceremonies that happen. So we're starting to leverage AI as part of that, so we can analyze, I guess, the different sentiments and pick up any problems that are going to happen as part of that sort of weekly, bi-weekly check-in. So yeah, that's sort of been an interesting addition for us, so that we don't have to sit on all the calls and make sure that is happening manually.
I have one last question before I leave it to the next panel. Okay. In the future of workplace, how should we redefine success and productivity to go beyond output metrics? We talked about metrics, so this is very apt. Beyond KPIs and numerical and quantitative qualities, how do we redefine success and employee satisfaction, impact, kind of like the NPS score, but for employees?
I think I can go first, and then maybe you can add, right? I think when you do HR practice and you do performance metrics and so on, and you do HR programs, you need to link everything to, will this make your company grow? So I'm a big believer in, I'm not doing things because this is nice to do, or because the HR lady had that idea, or the corporate center said, now please work on diversity, or something like that. You need to link it to the people, or let's say to the business strategy, and you need to get very clear with your CEO. What do we want to achieve here? What kind of output do we want to have? Anything you then do needs to connect to that. Now, you will not achieve high performance if your employees are unhappy and leaving you. That is a short-term gain, but in the long term, it will not work. So everything is connected. So right now, for example, we got our employee engagement survey. Last time, it was super good. Our performance went up. Now this time, we went back on some of the metrics because we are just learning on how to adjust, what to do, what not to do. But I already know the areas where we are now not so good. My business performance is going to go down in the next month. So I now need to do something quickly to adjust that. So I think you need to connect the two topics, and you only do things that drive your business growth, because in the end, that's why people are there. People are there to have a livelihood. So what I always say to my employees, yes, we will do many things you want. In the end, we are all here to make this company grow, so we all have a salary. That is a fact, right? So people normally will buy into that, and then they co-create with you what kind of workplace do they actually want. So once you open you up to that idea, and I'm a big believer, when you take care of your people, they will take care of your business. You then don't have to worry of that because they feel committed, they feel loyal to you. And I mean, I don't know, Ning, maybe you can speak to what we have been doing.
My mind has shifted to the FWA, right? I think you mentioned the CNA article about how the big tech companies are all shifting back to full-time work from office. I think it's because in the short run, productivity seemingly increases because everybody is there as a new change, right? But then from a long-term perspective, would it really be true? Because some people might start to burn out.
We need to get someone from Grab in the seat next time, okay?
And I think from an inclusivity perspective, so for example, like our senior professionals, maybe the travel time, like 1 hour back and forth travel time might exhaust them. And actually they can be brilliant talent, but to put on a metric like that for short-term productivity might actually hinder long-term kind of culture and employee satisfaction as well.
Exactly. We got a few more seconds left. Any final word of advice for our friends here at SFF on how they can integrate the team members more productively, and also to make sure that talents remain in their company for a long term? Maybe Chris first?
I think the panel before us that were talking about, the workplace culture, and I think to create that, they were talking about the fact that you should communicate with your staff and ask them how they want to work. So I think that's probably a great starting point. Obviously, you got to align to your business strategy, as Larissa said, but co-create that environment together.
Communicate. Ning?
Yeah, I think coming from our lens on senior professionals, right, and I think it always dials back to a bit of a family thing. So how can we build a workplace that is going to be great for our parents currently, our future selves, or our children? So I think when we think about that from that perspective, we would become generally more empathetic towards our colleagues and building a better workplace culture.
Yeah, for me it's the same. I think lately they invited me and they said, hey, can you do a panel and speak about how to manage the Gen Z? These people are very complex and difficult and so on. I said, why are you asking me? I'm obviously not Gen Z anymore, right? So unfortunately, I now tipped into an age where I don't understand this generation, right? So please don't come to me. Why don't you do a panel with Gen Z, right? Ask them what would they like, how would they react. I think you need to connect with your consumer. So people, or HR, is a consumer who consumes your company culture products. You need to connect with that consumer and say, you want to buy that product? This is going to get you motivated. This is what you would like to do. You're going to be more productive if I give you that. Or actually, you just want to be paid very highly and that's it, and your boss can be crap and your team can be... Most likely not, right? Most people want a well-rounded product. It's because they spend a lot of their lifetime with us. I think we as HR professionals, we always need to keep in mind, or also as business leaders, people spend most of their lifetime with us. They give this time to us. So we need to be very responsible how we manage that and how we actually, what is the experience we want to give to people? So my advice is actually listen to the people who work with you. They most likely will tell you what they want.
Thank you. I've learned a lot from your sharing today. And I hope you have taken some key takeaways from this. And if you have, you can share them on LinkedIn as well and tag us and tag Singapore FinTech Festival. And we'd love to learn what you have learned from today as well. Now let's put our hands together for our awesome speakers today. Thank you so much, speakers.